As seasons go, I feel like, we have like different seasons of our lives for a reason. I wanted to get more into that energy of slow and steady wins the race. I learned a lesson when I had panic attacks last year. If I wasn't conscious, then my programming in my brain goes towards, making sure that I'm hyper productive, making sure that I'm filling up my time. My brain just never switches off. Last year, I kind of got the memo in a way that, something needed to change. Hello and welcome to another episode of Teaside Thursday with your artist friend Win. And today I am drinking this herbal tea. So this is probably the fanciest, best quality of green tea that I have ever had. So I guess in Japanese they call it sencha. So this is a type of green tea that I bought from Japan, and apparently this is like a seasonal blend that they have. So just look at how beautiful the packaging is. I don't even know what I'm gonna do with the packaging once I'm done because it just feels too beautiful to throw it away. But I have it brewing with me in this little canister here, and I'm gonna have it in this little teacup, which was gifted to us by my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law. So I'm very excited to have this little tea moment with you guys. I think today is going to be a little sharing moment of what I'm discovering in my life at this moment in terms of rest, and how when I rest more and when I have more moments of silence and more moments being unplugged from the digital sphere, how that has been feeding me so much into my creative life at the moment. So I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. I somehow ended up being in this like semi survival mode about 2.5 years ago, dealing with some personal things that came up with my family, and also whilst working full time and trying to also juggle and trying to get grips with, content, like how to film, how to make short videos and how to make long videos, how to actually even paint. Like, do I want to write poetry? Do I want to, draw and have tons of paintings? Like, when everything in my artistic life started to transition from a hobby to, maybe this is something that I want to do and I want to pursue at some point in the future. And this ended up colliding with some personal things that was happening in my life at the moment. But I would say that was a very fruitful time because I learned not only the art of managing my time, but I also learned the art of, I think, kind of like pushing. I know that might sound really negative, but it feels like, I learned how to assert my energy into a certain effort that I wanted. So it was almost like this huge kind of, manifestation mode switched on. And I completely felt like my future was in the palm of my hands. Like, I am in control of the things that happen to me, the things that I want, the things that I want to manifest. And it helped me get a lot of stuff done. It helped me to do a decent job in my 9 to 5. It helped me to continue to just learn what it means for me to be, using social media. And it also helped me to help my family out a little bit. And it also helped me to kind of, I guess, balance time, because if I wasn't working or working on my artistic social media stuff, I also was being there like for my partner who just moved to England at this time from the US, and also spending time with my mom and making sure that she has, things that she needed. If she wanted to go out shopping, I'd take her shopping. Like, I'd take her out like once a week so she gets some fresh air and that sort of stuff. So, like, it was a time where I didn't really, I don't think, had a lot of time to myself. But prior to that moment happening, I had plenty of time to myself, because prior to all of this sort of juggling act happening, I was living in a house all by myself, and I had so much time. Like, I wasn't even in a relationship. And that period was also very fruitful, to become more in touch with myself. But as seasons go, I feel like, we have like different seasons of our lives for a reason. And in the last couple of years, I felt like I was neither like here nor there. Like, for example, I didn't really feel like being switched on all the time, being super hyper productive, and also sort of using up like my time to do something productive hour by hour, minute by minute, just didn't work for me anymore, because my situation was different. Like, all of a sudden, I didn't have personal things to juggle. I didn't have personal issues to solve. I didn't really have a 9 to 5 job that I needed to also juggle with my, art creation or content creation. And but I myself inside wasn't necessarily 100% kind of there yet. And I think sometimes our minds catch up to where we are in life slower than perhaps our bodies does. Because I learned a lesson when I had panic attacks last year. And I think that was a signal for me that I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and I was doing too much, and etc. etc. If you have been following me for a while and you follow the art vlogs and also the Teesside Thursday episodes, you already know the story of the panic attacks and sort of me kind of, gaining some mental clarity and physical clarity and well-being in myself again. And fast forward now, in 2026, I feel like I have a better sense of well-being physically and mentally. And it took, I would say, some conscious effort, because if I wasn't conscious, then my programming in my brain goes towards, making sure that I'm hyper productive, making sure that I'm filling up my time, and what could I be doing more? Like more. Like, what is more I can do? What is it? What is it? And my brain just never switches off. It not only switches off from worrying and being anxious like this, it also doesn't switch off from just having ideas, but ideas are ideas until we do something with them, right? But since sort of going through, these 2 seasons where I was in solitude a lot of the time, single, in a house by myself, to all of a sudden sort of having to kind of be there for the people I love, but also juggling my own things, to sort of now in this situation, especially sort of last year, I kind of got the memo in a way that, something needed to change, and I wasn't really sure what that meant. But something that was always in my mind since towards the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026 was something that my grandma would always say. She said, "Slow and steady wins the race." And that is such a beautiful statement, and I think that it came into my sort of consciousness for a reason. And I started just becoming curious about this phrase. Like, what does that mean for me exactly? And it was such a foreign concept to me. Like, why would going slower, why would taking things in a steady pace feel a lot more in tune, feeling a lot more in tune with ourselves? Why would that help us in the long run? It was a concept that I didn't get. And maybe if you are less of an anxious person and you are more in touch with your feelings and your body, then you might be like, of course, like it makes complete sense. What are you talking about? But for me, like it didn't make sense. But I still had this phrase in my mind, and I was still dealing with, feelings in and out of anxiety and questioning and putting so much energy on the negative thoughts and emotions up until my trip to Taipei and Fukuoka a month ago. And for some reason, like that trip was really healing. I think traveling long distance away from my home, away from everyone really that I know, really helped me gain a bigger perspective and also a bigger appreciation for life. And I also developed, in the last month, I feel like I developed more of an acceptance of where I am, where things are at. And it's like a slow increments, because I don't think this sort of sense of well-being and having a bigger sense of faith and trust like came to me just like that. Like it wasn't easy. I have a lot of programming from my childhood, from my family, from even, ancestrally, maybe from even generations of, being in a country that also, I think, hugely has to, survive for a living. It can be very, I think, challenging to kind of break out of these molds and perspectives and thoughts that we hold about, like our own survival. And on my trip, actually, I bought this book before my trip. It's something that I found from one of my friend's house, and I bought it for myself. It's called Not Doing, by The Art of Effortless Action by Deanna Renner and Stephen D'Souza. And it looks like this. And it's the most beautiful book I've ever seen. Each page is almost the art of not doing. The illustrations are so beautiful. There's really creative topography. No, not topography, because topography is landform. That's my landscape architecture side coming in here. Typography, right? Typography, where you sort of play with words and letters and in creative ways. Like there's a lot of that in this book, but also each chapter is very short. And this is one of those books where every sentence is a sentence you can sort of read and just contemplate on its meaning for hours. So I was reading this on my plane ride, and I wanted to get more into that energy of slow and steady wins the race. I wanted to get more in that energy of not doing. And I think this was also reinforced by spending time with my friend who is just so grounded and so calm. And her level of energy is so different to mine that being in her presence also made a huge difference. And I almost felt like I was with a person who was the embodiment of not doing, the embodiment of this phrase, slow and steady wins the race. So I actually wanted to share this poem that I found in this book, which is so beautiful, so beautiful. And out of the whole book, I think this has to be like my favorite page and my favorite writing in this book. So this is a poem that they included in this book called The Zig-Zag, and it's by Daniela Andrescu. Sorry for the pronunciation, but must be, Greek or I don't know. I think it might be a Greek poet. But this is how the poem Zig-Zag goes. When traveling underwater, a zigzag is sometimes quicker than a straight line. When navigating the turbulent waters of life, constantly changing currents can help or hinder progress. Find the energy-efficient paths. Sometimes this means that you follow the current in one direction and then double back. Do that rather than fight to cut across it. Sometimes this means that to double back is progress. Let go of the forward-backwards concept fights. Sometimes this means that the current is leading. Do not lose time imagining that it is you who is doing that. Sometimes this means that cutting across misconceptions is the most energy-efficient path. When traveling is arriving, a zigzag is a straight line, breaking free. When traveling underwater, a zigzag is sometimes quicker than a straight line. When navigating the turbulent waters of life, constantly changing currents can help or hinder the progress. Constantly changing currents can help or hinder progress. Find energy-efficient paths. Sometimes this means that you follow the current in one direction and then double back. Do that rather than fight to cut across it. Sometimes this means that to double back is progress. Sometimes this means that to double back is progress. Let go of the forward and backwards concept fights. Sometimes this means that the current is leading. Do not waste time imagining that it is you who is doing that. Do not lose time imagining that it is you who is doing that. Sometimes this means that cutting across misconceptions is the most energy-efficient path. When traveling is arriving, a zigzag is a straight line breaking free. I think this poem is so relevant for the current times that we're living in. I think especially as our digital worlds, our technology becomes faster and faster. My husband and I always talk about this, that we are, I think, having more of almost like a linear approach to our thinking process, with so many stats or numbers that are always, in front of our eyes, especially if you work in content, whether you are making videos for the sake of making videos or whether you are making videos to promote your artwork. You know that you are confronted with numbers. And even though it may be subconscious, I think subconsciously this confrontation leads to us having the misconception, this misconception of that if I do A, then I must get to B. And sometimes we get really impatient with ourselves and we get annoyed with ourselves because we might not be able to do something faster or quicker. We might not be able to do more, or, we might be putting so much effort in, but it's really not getting us to the point B that we wanted. And I think when we live in a time like this where everything seems to be going faster, like my husband works for a traditional, in a 9 to 5 traditional job, in a relatively traditional company setup. And also I've heard this from my boss before, when it comes to working on projects and construction projects, which was what I did in a previous life, clients always want something quicker. And my boss used to say that when they were drawing these architectural drawings by hand, clients used to have less expectation. They would be more understanding that things just take time. Whereas now with technology, everybody expects you to be getting something out to them very quickly. And I think what's never changed, despite our technology becoming much more smarter, is the fact that things have always taken more time than we expected to begin with. Whether if we are doing a drawing on a canvas or a piece of paper, or if we are using technology like a computer program, whether we are writing by paper, with paper and pen, or if we're writing using AI, I think to get any kind of considered work, considered thought process, just takes time because there are a lot of organic parts. But I think that at some point I fell into the trap of this linear thinking, and I didn't appreciate that zigzag so much. But I am starting to understand the importance of the zigzag. Like, for example, one of the biggest things that has influenced me is resting more, knowing when to drop whatever I'm doing and just go for a walk in the middle of the day, or having a Saturday where I am resting completely, not thinking about stuff to do, more stuff that I can be doing, and going for a longer walk with my partner, coming back home and taking the time to be more present. I started looking out at that view. I have a really beautiful view out on to the hills from my house. And right now, because it's spring, the meadow flowers are starting to crop up in the hills. And that's really beautiful that, within the last week, because it's been more sunny, we've gradually noticed this change of these yellow shades that was quite dull in the beginning, but then suddenly it's becoming brighter and brighter. And it's so beautiful to notice these little things. It's so beautiful to notice these changes. And it just adds a higher level of well-being into my life. And at first, like, I rested because I had to, because I had the panic attacks last year. But then now I rest because I realize that it actually is beneficial, not only for my mind and my body, but also beneficial for my creative work. It's not that the feelings of anxiousness and the feelings of restlessness go away. It's more that I'm learning to manage them as they come moment by moment. Because last Sunday, I had this day where, it was just like a free-for-all. I could paint, I could rest, I could daydream. I just wrote down in my planner, rest and daydream or paint, like whatever. And it was meant to be like a flexible day. Like I told myself I wouldn't beat myself up if I was working because I wanted to. I wouldn't beat myself up if I did nothing because I wanted to. And at first, I thought that because the weather was nice, like I had to go for a walk. I wanted, I should be outside, like, and I was starting to get restless, like, oh, like, I want to go outside, I want to go outside, I want to go for a walk, I want to go for a walk. And then, I don't know, at some point I was like, okay, I'm going to go upstairs, I'm going to get changed to start getting ready for the walk. And I went upstairs and something caught my attention in the window. So I looked out of the window and all of a sudden, like, I saw this pigeon and this crow, like, having a fight. I don't know who won, like, one of them won, but either the crow was fighting the pigeon off its territory or it was vice versa. But observing them for just a short period of time, like just looking at what they were doing and just completely being absorbed in that moment made me appreciate life. And what's more, like, it actually made me feel a part of life. And I realized that the consequence of having a mind that's switched on all the time and the consequence of not being able to rest and not being able to be kinder to ourselves means that we are actually not as part of life as we may think. Like, I feel like, I used to think by doing X and Y and Z and being here and there and everywhere meant that, I was living my life, But for me now, the meaning has changed because it's not about what I'm doing. I just want to be more present with my life, whatever I'm doing, whether I'm exercising or doing the dishes or cooking with my husband or resting and going out for walks. Like, I just want to be more present. And I'm measuring the quality of my life more on how much more present I am, rather than feeling the need to do things. And I'm actually also more convinced that doing more doesn't necessarily mean getting me to where I want to be. Because that very same Sunday, after watching the crow and the pigeon, I actually realized that what I wanted to do was just to, like, sit and watch clouds. I used to do that a lot, in the season of my living solo single life. I used to just sit on my patio and I would just stare out at the clouds and just watch them for like hours. And during the nighttime, I would also used to, like, watch the moon and the stars, and I would do, like, stargazing and moon gazing, especially when it was, like, around the full moon period. I would do that quite a lot. And once I had that realization, I actually just put on, like, a robe. And I went to my bedroom because that's where I get the best view of the hills from my home. So I just sat and I looked out onto the hill. I looked out and I observed the trees and the clouds just moving and changing shape. And I don't know how long I was there for. And afterwards, I just laid on my bed. And I just laid there for, I don't know, the next thing I knew, my husband came back from his walk and he was like, "Oh, hello." I was like, "Hello." I've just been laying down for the past few hours and I've been watching clouds, and I must have sounded crazy to him, but I genuinely felt a huge sense of well-being. And what's funny is during that week, I had the biggest downloads in terms of ideas, painting ideas, poetry, like poems started to enter into my mind again. It might sound really weird, but I feel like sometimes my brain works in a way where I think in words, but the words sometimes come out in like poems. And I've learned to embrace it to a certain extent. Maybe not fully yet, but I am. And these were poems that made sense to me. It made me feel something. It was meaningful to me. It wasn't like something I forced to write. And before that, if you watch my latest art vlog, you will hear the story of how blocked I was. And even as I was painting and continuing my art practice, and even as I was making videos, I was actually pushing through resistance. Whereas when I actually allowed myself to do nothing, something chemical must have happened in my brain. And I think finally my brain, because it was just silent, I wasn't listening to a podcast out of productivity or self-improvement, or I wasn't listening to music out of excitement or boredom, or because it was silent, like to fill the silence. Like I wasn't doing any of that. I just sat and I just stared. And it's that meaning in the zigzag, when traveling is arriving, a zigzag is a straight line breaking free. I really resonate with this line because I feel like that's what I experienced. And now, like, my mind is slowly starting to grasp the understanding, but also I feel it in my body. It's not just something cerebral, like I feel it in my body. Like I'm starting to feel like being more in my body, being more grounded is like the best thing that I can do for myself. And because I've had now some short moments of an immense amount of, restful feelings and restfulness, I now know when my body needs it, when my body's not getting it, and when I just need to embrace silence and embrace not doing. And I think so far in 2026, that's been like the biggest gift that I've experienced. And it's not even something external, it's not like I'm getting external validation from the work that I'm doing or putting out in the world, or I'm getting external validation like here and there and everywhere, but it's just more of this like internal satisfaction and internal peace that I feel more and more of. And again, I'm not saying that it's like a switch and I can just switch it on and it just happens very quickly. It's just that I feel a lot more of it and I feel really grateful for it. And I think that because I work also online with content, and also because I see my role as an artist, also as an entrepreneur, where, my role is also to make sure my work is, seen and visible and all that kind of stuff, I feel like it's actually even more important that I embrace rest and silence and the not doing. So that's a little update on, I guess, my well-being, but also on, I would say, one of the biggest lessons of my life. Right now, I think I'm learning that after rest also means I have so much energy that I want to channel it into something. And now I'm learning that to rest completely, but also assert effort. But a certain effort doesn't feel like climbing uphill so much anymore. Rather, it just feels like almost like a natural movement. Because you know how like in nature, like sometimes in winter, like animals go into hibernation. But then in the summer, like they come and they work to collect food or nuts and, like things like that. Like their emotion, right? I kind of feel like as humans, like we are almost living that rest and renewal and effort kind of like this cycle, like day in and day out, like especially because we live in like a hugely technical digital world these days. I feel like we live less and less by the seasons. But I don't know, the way I see it is there's no reason why I can't live in like mini seasons throughout my day and throughout my week. So yeah, I hope that this conversation also brought you some form of peace. And if you're going through, periods where like you are putting some pressure on yourself and you have a lot of ideas about how things should be due to your life conditioning and parental conditioning or whatever it may be, like, I hope you can be kinder to yourself. And I think we all take our own time, like, to get to where we want to be. And just because someone's doing it in this way doesn't mean that we should also be following it in that same way. I feel like we can all get to the same location in different ways. But I think as part of life, it is also that the answers are not available to us straight away. Like sometimes I feel like we have to like almost puzzle little pieces together if we have any problems or issues in our lives, little answers or intuitions or nuances might come through in a book that we ended up reading, a conversation that we ended up having, an insight that we ended up having. And sometimes I feel like things only come together for me months after I have this problem or issue or internal kind of conflict. So I hope that you can also trust in your own timing as well. But above all, I hope that this episode brought you some peace. I wish you peace, and I wish that you also are able to enjoy the seasons in nature. I'm gonna have a cup of this drink now because I realized I've been talking, but I haven't actually had a drink. So let me do that first before I say goodbye. Oh. I'm actually going away this week, so I'm considering bringing this canister and this little cup and some tea with me. Ooh, it's hot. I should have let it cool down before I started. I wonder if it's rude or not to slurp when drinking tea in Japan. Like, I'm not quite sure, but that thought just came to me. This is the second time I'm having this tea. I had it yesterday, and I feel like it's much better the second time around. So nice. So I am going to love you and leave you. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next Teaside Thursday episode. Bye. I sing this softly to myself. I sing this softly.